Yes, John G. Sutton, that's me. Tales from the jails. I talk today about the use of Largactil in prisons when inmates would be prescribed by a medical doctor Largactil. Very often, what they would start on this by misbehaving and actually attempting to injure, terrorize, intimidate, or otherwise adversely affect the good order and discipline of the prison. Now, we're not talking about your average guy here. We're talking about big fellas like Paul Sykes, 6'3", 16, 17 stone, huge big fella, great big hands, like to throw it around a bit. And let's be honest, if you were a jailer going into work at 7 o'clock in the morning and you got to work till 9 o'clock at night, how would you fancy rolling around on the floor for half an hour with battling somebody like Paul Sykes? Day after day after day. I mean, don't forget, 7:30 in the morning, it kicks off. You've got another 12, 13 hours to do. Yeah, you can't do that. Seriously. And a lot of people are questioning. There's a guy out there at the moment, what's his name? Bing Bang Ping Pong Kelly or something his name is, yeah. Him. He's criticising hospital staff. For administering Largactil by injection. I have to tell you, I did it many times. Always, it was on the written instructions of a medical officer. I would never go to the cupboard and draw up a syringe full of Largactil and just stick it into somebody without the written authority of a MD, a medical doctor. Seriously. And the thing is, once they have been administered, they tend to quieten down, you know. Usually, if you give them a right shot in the jacksie, he's done it to Paul Sykes, done it to loads of big boys. There was one guy there at Strangeways. Now, I know that there's allegations that he was killed, that he was murdered by the staff at Strangeways. His name was George Wilkinson. He was probably about 6'6", large industrial size inmate, probably 18, maybe a bit bigger than that. He was huge, you know. And he decided he was going to kick off at Strangeways. And my first encounter with George Wilkinson was down the block. And he was on D1 in the block in a cell on his own, no furniture in, just him. And when we opened him up to check he was still there and all that, he was standing, this is no joke, he was standing in a bowl of water, standing in a bowl of water, and he had a jug, a big plastic, I think it's a 2-litre jug of water in his hand, a white plastic jug in his hand, and he was constantly drinking this water. And he'd been seen by the medical officers at Strangeways and advised, you know, that if he didn't eat properly, because he was refusing food, if he didn't eat properly and he didn't take an appropriate amount of fluid, then he would kill himself. And that's, you know, the allegation is that the staff did that to him. That, believe me, I was there, and George Wilkinson did it to himself. You went anywhere near him, he didn't speak to you, George Wilkinson. He wouldn't speak to staff, but he would make a noise, and it sounded, seriously, he sounded something like, "Arrgh." So if you went anywhere near him, he'd say, "Arrgh." And he had great big hands like that, "Arrgh," you know, and drinking water, yeah, all the time. Eventually, I think he died of kidney failure. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a doctor myself. I was at the time a hospital officer, but I believe he died at Walton Jail, I believe, because they transferred him from Strangeways to Walton Jail to see if they could snap him out of the refusing to eat and overdoing the water and all the rest of it. But I believe he died the next day after arrival at Walton Jail. They weren't very happy. They thought we'd palmed them off, I believe, but of course we hadn't. Yeah. So there is a distinct reason for people receiving Largactil. A lot of the inmates are psychotic, and they have this strange idea that they can beat other prisoners, attack other inmates, attack the staff. Now, as I previously said, if you're working 12, 14 hours a day, and sometimes that was the shift, you can't really deal with being physically assaulted all the time. I mean, and I know that people say, oh, he's a big guy, yeah, but this isn't a competition, This isn't the WBC World Heavyweight Championship of Strangeways. We're in there to get through the day. I always said to the prisoners, always, so you have got the same work conditions here that I have. I'm working in the same conditions that you're living in. And I don't want this to be tough and rough and nasty and dirty and aggressive. I'm sure you don't, if you think about it. So you just nice and quietly get around your day. I'll do my very best to make sure that you're safe and that you've got your food and you've got your bedding and it's clean to the best of my ability. And so will my other officers. But if you start throwing your weight around and attacking other inmates and attacking staff, then all hell's going to break loose. Unfortunately, with these guys out there, they call themselves gangsters, don't they? That bloke, what's his name, Ping Pong Kelly, he calls himself a gangster, a hard man. Yeah, what's all this about being a hard man? What about being a decent man? What about being somebody that actually cares and has some compassion for your fellow human beings, like I did? I mean, accusations that I deliberately, forcibly injected inmates with Largactil and other psychotropic drugs, they're not allegations, they're facts. And I gave evidence at the Crown Court in support of the Strangeways rioters to say that had I been subjected to the conditions that were subjected to at Strangeways, then I would have ripped the roof off. But as far as I was concerned, if the doctor told me to inject somebody, then that's what they got. What else can I do? I'm not there to decide what the doctor does. I mean, they have, I don't know, 10, 12 years education to actually arrive at the conclusion that some 7-foot-tall maniac who's battering staff needs a shot in the jacksie. I mean, you wouldn't need to be Albert Einstein to work that one out, would you? So all these tough guys, so-called tough guys, hard men, yeah, who are complaining about being dosed up with Largactil when they're in the prison, I would say to them, behave yourself. Don't throw your weight around. You might think you're a tough guy on the streets, yeah, but in the prison, it doesn't work. It certainly didn't work at Strangeways, because in the event, and I did it. I mean, they used to have people kick off. They just get a phone call to the hospital, send some staff out. The doctor would just say, "Yeah, just write the script out instantly. Get the needle." We had a load already drawn up. Just put one out, run through the jail, and right in the arse. I quietened down after that. We had padded cells, you see, and the padded cells had got nothing in them. They were plastic walls, and they had in there, all they had in was a hard blanket, secure blanket, so you couldn't rip it, yeah, and a plastic piss pot. That was it, nothing else in the cell. And whenever we got one of these who just had the injection and dragged them down, they'd run them down, like 4 or 5 staff on them, one on each leg, one on each arm. Yeah, and run them into the cells, and you remove the clothes off them. And it's no good asking them, you say, would you like to take your clothes off? You're in a padded cell. That's not quite how it worked. What happened was, yeah, you had to get your hands onto them and tear the shirts off them like that. Tear the shirts off, trousers off, off with the shreddies, the full Monty. And then throw the blanket over them and leave them in the cell. Try not to injure them, because obviously you're not there to administer a beating. What you're doing is trying to protect that inmate from injuring himself or injuring other people. And that is the reason that people were put on Largactil, because they were prone to violent outbursts or psychotic incidences where they would absolutely endanger the life of themselves and or others, and specifically staff, you know. And as a hospital officer, you were the last resort. Yeah, landing staff, disciplined staff, D1 down the block, and if that doesn't work, then you send for the hospital staff, and the hospital staff come prepared. Tales from the jails. I hope you subscribed, yeah? And as for ping pong being a hard man, I've seen lots of hard men, and I've had the answer in my hand. And believe me, sleepy time when that goes in. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this. Tales from the jail.